People may not know, but before Procter & Gamble decided to attend Cannes Lions, really marketers didn't come to the festival very much, and the festival is very much a festival of creativity. And it was really you personally who, as the head of Procter & Gamble marketing, forged a path for what is now many thousands of marketers that come to Cannes, and they're looking to unlock their creativity. But when you did it, the marketers weren't looking for creativity. They were much more interested in research and ROI and how much they can beat up their agencies and relationships with retailers, etc. What was it then that you saw about the power of creativity? Why is it so important to a marketer?
Well, I should have bought equity in Cannes back in 2003, Phil. No, I think the festival has evolved beautifully, I think, and is a much more important event than it ever was. And I think it's the only global gathering place of the top thought leaders in marketing. So I think it's evolved very nicely. I mean, back in 2003, P&G did so many things well. Great products, great people, great leadership, great ambition. But it was a bit flat on creativity. And I thought if we could become a more creative company in our communication and in our marketing at large, we would really amplify everything else we did. So then I looked at the companies I admired, and I went and visited Wieden & Kennedy and Nike, and I visited Apple, and I visited Target, and I thought, they're more creative, they're more spirited than we are. So really it was to unlock what I knew was in the company, to amplify everything else we were doing. And it was also the time, think back in 2003, Google was getting more important. Social media was starting. Back then it was, MySpace, and if you will, the era of engagement was starting. And I thought for our business, we needed to be creating communication that people wanted to experience. And that was not how P&G was thinking. So I remember the first year we came to Cannes with those 30 marketeers, and we paired up with our agencies. We had a debriefing in the Majestic on Saturday morning, and people were blown away. It was a very powerful meeting, and we decided to make a few commitments to ourselves when we went back to our jobs in Cincinnati and Geneva and other places. And the first commitment we made was we would start measuring that people want to watch or experience our marketing and communication again. When you start thinking about that and measuring that and making that important, it changes how you think. So I think at the end of the day, it was a big, a leap of faith maybe, but not a stupid one, and one that was hugely supported by my CEO at the time, Lafley. And the results spoke for themselves. We became much more creative, much more innovative, much more award-winning, our shares grew. We had a great run in the 2000s.
So there was a link, this idea of creativity in brand communication. You did measure a link between that and the value of P&G as a company, the stock price, the kind of people that you could employ.
Oh, absolutely. And there were, remember Michael Conrad's study at Leo Burnett about creativity and business results, or I guess it was awards and business results. And there were studies out there. There were some academic studies. But I didn't think we had fully internalized it. And there's no doubt the most creative businesses and the most award-winning in Procter, the Pampers, the Old Spices, the Tides, those are the ones that led the way in terms of business progress as well.
Well, certainly most marketers that I speak to now, and I speak to a lot of them, a lot of clients globally, seem to have made that decision as well, that all the research and the ROI and that kind of side of marketing is very important, but they will also have creativity, and they demand that from their agencies. So it's a very interesting shift since then.
And standards have gone up. They really have.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for the industry, good thing for consumers, good thing for companies.
And of course, the other big change since then, perhaps, is that the pace of change for marketers to keep up with. The new ways of communicating are just coming at us from left, right, and centre all the time. Have you seen a shift in the kind of person, the kind of skills that a marketer needs in the last few years? And how would you describe, if you were going to appoint a marketing director to one of your brands now, what kind of person would you look for? What kind of skills would you look for?
I mean, it is changing, and I think, I used the metaphor when I was at P&G, and I still use it. I think the marketing leader is much more of a symphony conductor now. They have to find the right talent, they have to bring it out at the right times, they have to role model, they have to lead, and they're never going to be an expert in everything they need to be, that's important to bring a brand to the market these days. So I think it's going to be about leadership, collecting a team, motivating a team, inspiring a team, holding themselves accountable, for the culture, the creativity, and the results. And somebody who is comfortable with both creativity and empathy and consumer understanding, customer understanding, as well as analytics. Mm-hmm. So it's really taking more of a whole-brained person. And I think so many of us have been trained as operators. And P&G was, kind of a classic case. We did quantitative testing before anyone got an interview. The business schools kind of drill you on the quant stuff. But we were not looking for the other side of the brain. And most of the business leaders we all admire, the ones that we read about, the ones that we aspire to be, you peel it back, they are whole-brained people who think and work about different things, work on different things. So I think that's sort of where the new breed of CMO is going. And if you look at people, if I can just use name, Jim Farley, I think is very much that profile at Ford. Yeah. I think Michael Francis, when he was at Target and now he's at in entertainment, is very much that way. I think Trevor Edwards at Nike, Joe Tripodi at Coke. I think these are all people who, they approach problems with the whole brain.
And some of those brands that you're talking about are at the forefront of a new kind of engagement, which you mentioned before briefly, about brands wanting to entertain, brands wanting to create content, brands wanting to have a dialogue with their consumers and fulfill a slightly different role in their life. As a slightly provocative question, Jim, I mean, do consumers really want brands to communicate with them? Do they really want to have a conversation with them? I mean, don't people just want to go and buy a Coke and leave it at that?
Well, I do think consumers care. They'll never tell you that. And most of the great research is understanding what's unspoken and unsaid and articulated. Just take the festival last year. Who won the big awards? It was Nike for this. It was Coke for bringing happiness to life in so many ways. It was Chipotle just producing a lovely film about what they stand for, which I think touched so many people on very, very many levels because everyone's sort of looking for renewal, and that's what that film was about. So you take most of Prudential about retirement and day one. Those are expressions that a company understands someone and cares, and they were highly awarded at Cannes, and by the way, they're also very healthy businesses. So I think they do care. I think they want their lives to be simplified a bit, and I think that's a big opportunity for brands in the service area now, for digital brands. But I think they really do care. In fact, a lot of the research I did, post P&G, working with Millward Brown, UCLA, it's clearly brands with a purpose, a mission, a higher ideal are seen in a very different light and are rewarded for that.
And the journey of social media has been an interesting journey, hasn't it? Because not so long ago, if a brand had a Facebook page with 5 million likes on it, they felt they'd really made a breakthrough. But I think now people are realizing that actually that isn't engagement at all. That isn't a conversation at all. It's just somebody pressing a button saying they quite like you and then going away again. Do you think understanding social media is as important as people seem to think it is in the modern marketing world?
I wrote a blog recently saying we should drop social from media. All media is social, right? People are always talking about everything. Word of mouth is still really strong. It's just amplified by what we can now do electronically. I'm on the advisory board of a very sophisticated analytics firm called Market Share out of LA. And they have proven social media has a big, big impact on people's purchase and image of a brand. You don't always see it in the last click attribution, but if you work your way back through what led to that click, social media has a large role. So I think most brands are still underinvesting in it. And I mean, you have to do it in the right way. You have to understand why people are using social media, and does your brand have a role in that? And so it taxes our leaders to think of it differently about how they communicate, when they communicate, and the role of the brand in that. You know, I think brands need to be enabling things these days. They need sort of a more generous spirit. You know, I think in the financial industry, which does not have as many brands as it should that are winning at Cannes and building affinity, you know, I think there's some generous things they can do about financial education that if they do it, I think they'll be rewarded by people. So, I think social media is here to stay. Everything is inherently social, and we need to continue understanding, piloting, testing, but the data so far shows it's very important.
And how about for young marketers out there? So we've got a lot of ambitious young marketers working for the Top Right group. To get to the top of the tree as a marketer, you must have interviewed and met a large number of young people with an ambition for marketing. What 3 pieces of advice would you give a marketer who wants to make their name?
Well, I teach a lot of young marketers at UCLA. We have the Young Marketers Academy at Cannes. I think I would say to them, does your brand have a purpose, an ideal, a mission? And even if you're lower level, you can ask those questions.
I was going to say, what happens if your boss hasn't even thought of that?
Then have a coffee, have a drink, have lunch, and start chatting about it. And if it's a good boss, they'll think very deeply about that. Because if they don't have one, that will be unsettling. So I think is ensure there is a meaning to the brand, a higher order impact, a reason for being. And the second one is your culture, how you work, your rituals, your processes, do they reflect that ideal, and do they reinforce that ideal?
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that shows if it doesn't?
Oh yeah.
So it shows in the work that you produce, the way
Absolutely.
that you communicate.
I mean, Chipotle, that work came out of a very interesting culture. You know, the guys at Innocent, the work comes out of a very interesting culture. And so I think the folks at Coke have done a lot of interesting work, and look at what they're doing. I think they're really doing remarkable work.
And we aren't running Coke, and we aren't running Pepsi, and we aren't running Procter & Gamble brands. We're running business-to-business brands.
I think
Are you saying every brand should know what its purpose is, know that it's there to do something other than just make money?
FedEx, B2B, remarkable brand, remarkable run of creativity, remarkable growth. You know, they have an amazing culture that's built on a mission, and they activate it. They're relentless on it. They never stop training. So, I mean, the research I did with my book, there were lots. IBM, maybe the best example. So these principles are broadly applicable to big, large, private, B2B, whatever you're selling. So I think is the culture bringing it out, because great things will happen. And then are you communicating it in your one-on-one discussions, in your whatever external communication you do, your sales materials? Does it begin with that? Because if it's a powerful ideal or mission, it will be really relevant to who you're selling to. So those are the 3 things I'd say.